Hi, hello, welcome to the channel. This is going to be take 5, I think, at this point, but I have no one to blame but myself because a bitch was trying to record a talking video, a chatty talking video while she was sick. So, lesson learned. I'm really hoping that 5th time's the charm. Today's video is going to be books I would recommend for your fall TBR. This is Dark Academia and fall specifically. In the comments below, drop your recommendations for the fall and why, like what the vibe was that you were looking for and if the book gave it to you or not. Mostly because I want to add more books to my TBR because I have no respect for my TBR. Also, on the off chance somebody new pops onto the video and let's say they've read some of these, they can look in the comments and maybe see a brand new recommendation they haven't heard of, something that is intriguing. So drop your recommendations below. I personally, in the fall, am looking for I'm either looking for really cozy, sit down with a blanket, just get comfortable type read, or I do want something a little on the darker end, whether it's dark fantasy. I'm exploring horror and thrillers a lot this season and I'm enjoying them quite a bit. So yeah, let's get right into it. We're gonna start off with my cozy recommendation, which is In the Company of Witches. First of all, isn't she just so cute? Look at how tiny it is. This was wonderful. This was exceptionally cozy. It checked all the boxes and then some. I didn't expect for it to be so touching and heartwarming, but it really was fantastic. Nora and Izzy are Bryn's aunts, and the three of these witches run a B&B in Connecticut, in this small, hallmark, picturesque Connecticut town. Think of it. Bryn suffers a loss, and she now is dealing with kind of a disconnect between her and her magic and how she herself feels in relation to her magic as well as how it responds to her. Her aunts, of course, want her to pursue one path, of course, when it comes to her magic, and Bryn is trying to decide if she in fact wants to pursue the opposite path when it comes to her magic. It's a ton of fun. It's a murder mystery, so in this B&B, they have one guest. She rented out the entirety, her name was Constance. She rented out the entirety of the B&B because she wanted it to all to herself while her house was being remodeled. Constance, unfortunately, is while she's at the B&B, and then Nora becomes the main suspect because she has some very colorful things that she says. Unfortunately, fortunately, they're quite funny. They're very, very endearing characters. And you follow Bryn trying to investigate this murder mystery while also trying to come to terms with her magic and whether or not she wants to continue practicing magic or not. It's wonderful. The cast of characters is fantastic in my opinion, primarily because these are all older, more mature characters. I think Bryn is 30, 31, 32 or something like that. And then her aunts, of course, are much older than her. Her uncle that lives in the attic, he's an older man as well. The townspeople, for the most part, seemed to be, that middle-aged to older character. I really enjoyed it. I loved all the characters. They felt like people you could maybe go to a real town and you would find these quirky people existing in real life and you would probably really like them. They would hold a great conversation, they'd make you laugh. It also just checks the boxes if you want a cozy fantasy, especially because this magic isn't super it's not super involved. I think it's more about the characters and how they interact with each other in this town and the mystery. And it was such a touching story. It was incredibly sweet. The second one is called When the Crow's Away, I think. And there's a crow. His name is Dog, don't ask. And there's a cat named Faustus as well. Very, very, those are probably the best characters in the whole book. But Crow, the crow dog, I think that he's kind of like Gideon's familiar. I'm hoping that in the second book, the story focuses a little bit more on Gideon because I really liked him. I think he displays signs of agoraphobia based on a trauma. I could be wrong, of course. I'm not a medical professional, guys, of course. But I just loved his development. And he's a side character. And I loved his development throughout the book. And I would love to see more of him in book 2. But also, I just really enjoyed these ladies. They were so much fun. These aunties are so much trouble. But they are the life of the town, in my opinion. Up next is Fable by R.F. Kuang. This is a dark academia fantasy. And it is heavy. It is incredibly heavy. I thought it was really emotionally charged. And it's kind of a scary read. I have to be honest. It's a little bit intimidating to see the book and you read the synopsis and it's about students at Oxford and they're studying language and it just is kind of scary. My opinion, my advice, if you're interested in reading it but something about it is scaring you a little bit, just dive in. Just dive in, especially if you like audiobooks. Definitely use the audiobook. I think that you could enjoy it and it won't make you feel dumb. And that is something that I unfortunately struggle with a lot. I always am questioning whether I'm smart enough to understand something, whether I'm intellectual enough to participate in a conversation. Babel was one of those books where I really genuinely didn't think I could. I thought maybe it would just go over my head completely. This was fantastic. And R.F. Kuang feeds you information in a way where it's not overwhelming, but it's also not underwhelming and you don't feel like you have a ton of questions that just kind of linger. She gives you what you need in order to understand the story as it's progressing. And I loved it. I am obsessed with it. There's another book on this list that initially when I read it, I was like, I think that's my favorite book of the year. After thinking about it more and more and more, I think that Babel was my favorite book of this year. It was so good. I can't wait to reread it. Essentially what you have is a group of students, and except for one, they're foreign students. So they're from other countries, and these professors from Oxford go to these countries and collect these students and bring them back to Oxford to study language, their own languages in conjunction with other languages. What they're doing is exploiting these kids, these students' natural ability to speak and understand languages in order to take that understanding that they get from them and apply it to their magic system. And their magic system is all centered around linguistics and these silver bars. These silver bars basically run everything. Of course, it deals with colonialism and sexism and inequality and racism and all the isms you can think of course. It's not a happy-go-lucky read. It's not a very lighthearted read. There's very few moments of comedic relief, in my opinion. But I think if you're looking for a slightly heavier, darker, more taxing read this fall, if that's your vibe, if you kind of like having to devote yourself to one book at a time, if you like the feeling of kind of sitting with a story, even once you've closed it and you're done reading for the day and it still sits with you and you can't let it go, if you enjoy that, I would say do it. And don't, if it does cross your mind, don't be intimidated by R.F. Kuang or language. Don't be intimidated by it because, again, between the way she writes the story out and feeds you information, between the narrators and how fantastic they were, and the very minor footnotes, don't let any of that stop you from enjoying the story because it was so good and it's so fitting for this time of year, especially as somebody who more often than not in the fall, I do want those heavier, darker reads. I kind of want to feel like I'm in a cave. I kind of want to be like in a cave with my book and I'm just reading. And yeah, it was fantastic. I left my little annotation key that I had going in here for the next time I choose to reread it because it was really good. Next up on the list is a sip of my coffee because your girl is hanging on by a thread on this Monday. Next up on the list is a book that I read a very, very long time ago, but stays with me at all times. And it's kind of set the standard for dark fantasies when it comes to what I like and what I don't like and how I want it done if I want to enjoy it. I'm very picky, as you can tell. Anyways, And I Darken by Kirsten White. This was not your typical dark fantasy. And Lada is a young woman who, her and her brother are taken from their home country of Wallachia, I think it's how it's said. I never did the audiobook because it was a long time ago, but we're going to say Wallachia. And they are then taken to the Ottoman Empire, and that's where they are raised. They are basically expected to assimilate into the Ottoman Empire, let go of everything they were, everything they knew, and become part of their new home, right? Well, Lada doesn't want to. Lada doesn't want to. She doesn't think she should have to. And what she really wants, and what she fights tooth and every single nail on her body for, is to go back to Wallachia and to rule it. And I think, again, I read this when I was in college. It wasn't very many FMCs that were that ruthless. And she's bloodthirsty. There are so many times reading this book that I genuinely had to question the series, actually. Genuinely had to question, do I like her? Do I like Lada? Do I want her to succeed? Is she the good guy in this story, right? And I mean, that's up for you to decide if you read it, but ultimately, this was kind of where my infatuation with morally gray, morally ambiguous characters began, because Lada's not a good princess. She's not a bad princess. She just wants to be queen. And much like most male main characters, when they want something in a story, she's willing to do whatever it takes to get there. But it's obviously perceived differently because of her sex. I think if you like morally gray characters and you want to see her be the one scheming and plotting, it's one of those series where every single decision and every movement matters. Every single thing these characters do, because it's not just Lada, it's her brother, and then there is another prince. Everything they do changes the trajectory of their story, it almost changes your perception of the character as well. It just is such a well done trilogy. It's such a well done trilogy, and I love the fact that it was one of the very first dark fantasy stories that I ever read. But the way that I think about this all the time, I'm coming up on the moment where I'm probably gonna have to reread it, but it's always a little bit of fear when you read something a long time ago. Do you want to reread it again? Because what if it doesn't hit the same? But that is one I would recommend if you like darker fantasy and you want a strong FMC who's not necessarily going to be the most likable character you'll ever read. She actually did some things where I didn't want her to succeed, to put it nicely. If you're looking for a dark historical fantasy, I think that's perfect. The Monsters They Made Us by Frank J. Camacho. This is an indie author who was kind enough to send me an arc of his book, and I really enjoyed it. It's dark academia. It has supernatural creatures in it, and there is a dose of horror to it, and not necessarily like, ooh, horror. More so, just like you get that feeling. Like, I think I talked about it in my last recommendation video, but you get that feeling where like, I don't really want to turn around to find out. I think I just will assume there's something there and continue my life in ignorance rather than turn around and confirm that it's there and now I gotta face it. That was my primary like feeling while reading The Monsters They Made Us. So many times I was like, I think I know, but I don't actually want to confirm, to be honest, because I'm a scaredy cat. It was fantastic. The author has a way of writing human sensation. I know we talk about human experience and emotion, sensation specifically. There are multiple times where he's describing what something feels like to a character, how they feel. And when I tell you that it gave me goosebumps, it's because I felt like I was immersed in that sensation with the character. And that's wonderful. I think authors who can, with words on paper, get us as readers to feel immersed in a feeling, experience, sensation, moment, whatever, I think that's phenomenal. There's so many books written where it's just like, they're just telling you a story, and yeah, that's fun, and it can be good too, but put me in there. I want to be in there with the characters. I want to feel confused when they feel confused. I want to feel happy when they're happy. I want to feel torn when they're torn. And I think Frank did a fantastic job of immersing me as a reader in the story. And this is a perfect book too if you want to read at night. I had it on my Kindle, and it's like the perfect book to like, you get under the blankets and you sit there and you can't help but keep tapping. And you're like, we'll tap. But now they're talking about, I got to tap again. It's one of those addicting late night reads. It was fantastic. I loved it. But ultimately, and I apologize, I got excited, but the founding families each have their thing, let's say. I don't want to spoil anything. The founding families each have their thing. And then you have Dorothy, who she has a thing as well. And we get to discover as the students are discovering what their town is really made of. I think if you're new to the dark academia genre, or you're new to supernatural horror, supernatural stories, I think this is a great place to start. It's a really good book for October, especially if you like those kind of like creepy, eerie vibes. He did a really good job with that one. All right, and for the last book, finally we got to the last book. The Empire of the Vampire. Well, Empire of the Vampire. There's no the in the beginning. So, dark fantasy, dark vampire fantasy. This is a story being told within a story. I didn't think I was going to like it. I was also intimidated by this one because the pages are legitimately, I can see you, they're see-through. And then look at the font on this thing. Look at the font. It's so tiny. This is like Bible pages and Bible letters. Anyways, I hope that's not blasphemy. Empire of the Vampire. Dark fantasy, vampires, a story being told within a story. Gabriel de Leon is a half vampire, vampire hunter. Interesting, isn't it? And he's captured by vampires, and their historian, a vampire historian, is forcing him to tell his entire life story. Because before they off this man, who is the best vampire hunter in all of the vampire hunters' history, apparently, he's like really, really important and popular and just like scared and revered and all of that. They're forcing him to tell his life story. So I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, so he's going to be telling me about his story, but through this character. And then we do flashbacks to the actual moments of his story. And I started to get confused. I was like, how is this going to work? How am I not going to get stuck in the time shifts? First of all, if you do the narration, I really genuinely couldn't see how I could have gotten lost. It was done in a way where by listening alone, I understood when we were going past and present, and the shift was kind of just like smooth and seamless. There were a couple of times where I just eyeball read because sometimes I just don't want to put headphones on my ears and I don't like the sound of audiobooks coming through my phone. So there were a couple of times where I just read a couple hundred pages like by itself without the audiobook. And again, the shifts are there, but like I scared myself over nothing because I didn't get lost. I didn't get lost, but it could have just been because I enjoyed the story so much too. I really fucking liked Gabriel. He's not a good guy. He's not a great guy. He's also not a bad guy either. He's just a guy. He's just a vampire hunter. He's just a half vampire, vampire hunter. He's just trying to make it to the next day. And there's love, and there's loss, and there's friendship, and there's found family, and there's conniving and betrayal. There's so much going on in his story. And it's insane to me because this is only the first book. This is only the first third of his life story. Very interesting. It was fantastic. And the humor, I think they're funny characters. I think when they're ribbing at each other, it's funny. I think even when they're being serious and they say things that are like kind of weird, you're like, what? They're just funny. It was a good balance between a really dark vampire fantasy story and characters who are just really multi-layered and morally gray and gritty, but raw and real. Like, this was fantastic. I think if you like vampires and if you're willing to devote the time, I think this audiobook was like 25 hours or something. If you're willing to devote the time to it and you want something that is darker with vampires, of course, and magic, and there's like a little bit of like a religious aspect to this as well, like religious trauma to it. If you like all of that, I think that this is perfect for the fall. Personally, I would have read Empire of the Damned already if I wasn't waiting for it to be closer to Empire of the Dawn release date, which I think is November. But yeah, this is everything I could want in a dark vampire fantasy story. And I would highly recommend for this time of year, especially because the vibes in this one are definitely like just gloomy, dark, and nasty. It was nasty. A lot of blood and gore. I mean, it's a vampire book, Angela. Obviously there's blood and gore. As always, thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you for your patience, especially. I hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, happy reading.